Now, in the same week that cyclist Lance Armstrong was making world news as he comes clean to Oprah about using sports-enhancing drugs, the Livestrong name is removed from Sporting Kansas City's stadium here in town. Though it turns out the two events are completely unrelated. According to news accounts, Livestrong, the cancer charity that Armstrong founded, terminated its relationship with the Kansas City Soccer Club, complaining that it didn't make good on its financial commitments, including a $1 million contribution in 2012. Livestrong says it received only $250,000 last year. Now, this was considered an unusual naming rights deal from the get-go. Traditionally, professional sports teams get millions to put their names on a stadium. So why did Sporting Kansas City decide to put the Livestrong name over the front door in the first place, where they would be on the hook for paying $7.5 million over 6 years, according to its contract, Stacey?
Well, it all goes to marketing. You can see this as being a different kind of naming rights agreement with a very popular charity at the time, Livestrong, which was most notably associated with Lance Armstrong and Nike. And a lot of people wore the yellow wristbands, supported cancer, and you have to look at those payments as more as a charity donation. So here's a corporation that could have reaped millions of dollars selling that right to someone else, say Cerner or Toys R Us or something locally, and instead they decide to donate that money to charity, to cancer research. And so the hope, I think, was to use Lance Armstrong more notably, get more events into that arena, say concerts and other types of sporting events, and therefore possibly in the long run they would actually gain in terms of marketing and dollars.
And we can forget that this was a really forward-thinking move, because this really hadn't been done before.
No one else had done this before. I mean, you look, I used to work in minor league baseball, so the lowest levels of minor league baseball all the way up to the NFL and Major League Baseball sell those naming rights. No one had thought of this before, and at the time, a couple of years ago when this was announced, they wondered if more arenas would do this, especially when you look at kind of an off-the-radar sport like soccer. What do you need to do in a sport like that? You need to create buzz. So where the LA Galaxy brings in, you know, David Beckham to create buzz, we kind of go in another way and we flip the script on how we named the stadium here in Kansas City.
Are we any the wiser this week as to why Sporting Kansas City didn't pay and make good on these financial commitments, or is there some concern as to whether the numbers from Livestrong are correct even this week?
The Livestrong people, Sporting Kansas City people are actually making some sort of an announcement today. They did say that they were concerned at the aggressive nature of the folks with Livestrong, and so there's this sort of standoff between the two of them. Again, more is supposed to come forward today.
It kind of smells to me like a business deal gone bad. And this is the way I look at it. I'm not a huge soccer fan, but if you know any of the sporting fans, they are crazy. I mean, they are nuts for this soccer team. And at the end of the day, it's not going to matter. You could name that stadium after the drug that Lance Armstrong was using to dope in the Tour de France, and they will still show up to support that team.
So you don't think they're hurt by this in any way?
God, no. You ask any of those soccer fans, they are crazy about that team. I don't think you can name it. I mean, right now it's Sporting Kansas City. I don't think it's going to matter what you name it. They're still going to go. I think it's unfortunate. I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, I do think that one of the questions that we do need to have answered is whether or not Sporting stopped its payments because it was worried about Lance Armstrong or being connected with Lance Armstrong and in essence wanted the divorce, or whether they weren't making enough money and therefore couldn't meet their obligations. And I'm not, that remains fuzzy in my own mind at this point. So as we get clarification on that, that'll be important to know. But I do think Dana is right in this sense. The idea that sporting clubs can market themselves through an attachment to another athlete or another popular figure is probably overblown. Sporting is doing well now because its team is winning. And that's the way to market your team, is to have a winning club, something our other sports franchises probably haven't figured out. And so my guess is one of the lessons learned nationwide from this incident, Nick, is that these kinds of arrangements are fraught with danger, and you ought to be very careful before you engage this type of thing.
Well, I think what we're going to come down to is some legal language in this agreement. When the club says that the foundation started to take aggressive tactics, I imagine there's a clause in there somewhere that is either tied to the revenue that the club makes or profit as to how much they're actually on the hook for total, or if there was some type of morals clause with respect to the foundation Foundation or Armstrong that might have kicked those payments down. So I think that's where there may be legal wrangling. And let's also go back and look, while the team is doing successfully on the field, they may not be as financially solvent as most of us think, because look, what's the big thing that drives sports? It's television rights, money. And they don't have a big deal in MLS. So while this team is starting to push the salary cap, they paid about $2 million in salary last year. You also have maintenance and operation at the stadium. You have salary for employees. So they may be up to the line of whether they're in the black or whether they're in the red in terms of the finances.
So even though the ticket sales and the merchandise sales are going well, other areas may not be?
Well, I think we need to keep in mind that as of July 31st, there's going to be an all-star game at the park. So to Stacy's point, that will bring television rights, and it's going to bring an enormous amount of revenue.
It's currently being called, they say, just Sporting Park. What about a new name for the stadium? They talked about having another charity be involved in this, but what about a commercial enterprise now suddenly wanting to put their name on the stadium? That could be worth millions and millions of dollars.
Not just soccer, for the reasons that Stacy and just talked about. Soccer doesn't get the kind of television exposure that you do for football or baseball, so the value of those rights are less than they are for other venues.
There was a mayor of Wyandotte County who just recently announced that he was stepping down after almost a decade of service. Could this now become the Joe Reardon Sporting Park? Dave Helling.
Well, Joe probably can't write the kind of check that Sporting would want to have.
But a wonderful honor for this
rights, and it's not a municipal operation, so that's probably not going to happen.